So imagine this, a striker who over his 17-year-long career never once won an international trophy and averaged only a goal every 3 games, adding up to a mere 188, only a bit more than Sergio Ramos, who's a defender, less than Morata, and about half of what Lukaku has scored so far. It sounds pretty awful, huh? But in reality, that player, that man, is one of the greatest of all time. I'm talking about the king himself, Eric Cantona. You might be shocked that he only scored that many goals. I too would have guessed far more if I hadn't checked his record. After all, he was so influential in every game he played, it seemed almost impossible. But in reality, that's exactly where the secret lies. Cantona was not really just a striker, he was far more than that. He was as much of a playmaker as he was a goal scorer. And that's just what can be contained on the pitch. Because when it comes to the intangibles that make a player great, you know, that X factor, that je ne sais quoi, Cantona was simply on a whole nother level. Sir Alex once said that his mere presence, him just standing there, was enough to change the course of a match, and it couldn't be more right. There's a lot of talk about aura these days. Some say the players of today simply don't have it, and one thing is sure, no one ever had it like Cantona. He was him. He was idolized, he was vilified, some saw him as a criminal, a dangerous mind, but above all, he was uncomprehended and one of a kind. So today I'm gonna try my best to tell you all about King Cantona and hopefully help you understand him a little bit better. So, right from his birth, there was nothing conventional about him. Despite being French, his mom was the daughter of a Spanish war refugee who had fled the country in the middle of a civil war, and his dad was an Italian painter who lived in a cave that had been used as an outlook post during the Second World War. And yes, Cantona grew up in that same cave, as weird as that may sound. Still, even though he was raised to be artsy, free-spirited, and completely anti-culture, it wasn't like his family was completely outcast from society, and so, when he was 14, he signed up for the local youth team FC Kelolé and began playing as a goalkeeper, because of course his father encouraged him to go against the norm and pick the role that no kid seemed interested in. But thankfully, his team was so dominant that little Eric got tired of sitting back watching the game from afar, and so one day he asked to be put in front for a tournament. His coach was like, why not? And God almighty, the kid was miles ahead of everyone around him. His touch was sublime, and after that day, things began moving fast. Even his childhood club Marseille almost signed him but decided to pass up on that chance because they felt he wasn't fast enough, and eventually he ended up at Auxerre. And of course, with talent like that, less than 2 years later, Cantona was already getting his professional debut, but as you might expect, he was very quick to get into trouble, starting a massive brawl in one of his first matches, meaning that when he was called up to mandatory military service, instead of maybe appealing against it, the club encouraged it, hoping that maybe sometime in the army would straighten him up, and to their luck, for a while it seemed to be working. Having just returned to the club the following year, Cantona found Auxerre on the verge of European qualification, and with 3 games to go, he made sure to score the winner in the first and then score to tie their final match of the year and secure their European spot with a 25-yard rocket that propelled them into the spotlight. However, against what would be expected, the following season his form dipped. But turns out he was just feeling a bit down because he had fallen in love with a girl who lived 400 miles away. So the club, already realizing how temperamental he was, decided to simply send him on loan to FC Martigues, who played in the same town that girl lived in. And would you guess it, Cantona got in form once again and even became the team's top scorer, helping them narrowly avoid relegation. And then, of course, with Cantona banging in goals and Auxerre's main striker André Charmard leaving the club, the timing was just too perfect. They gave him another shot, and this time around he began firing off on all cylinders, pulling off 17 goals, leading Auxerre to the second highest ever finish in the league and qualifying them for the UEFA Cup. However, he wouldn't keep out of trouble for too long, quickly getting his first call-up to the national team and then getting sent back home even quicker after getting upset that his Auxerre teammate and national team goalkeeper Bruno Martini refused to help the team shovel the snow off of the pitch, hitting him with a right hook and leaving him with a black eye. Regardless, going into the next season, things were rather normal until Cantona decided to perform a bit of foreshadowing, pretty much kung fu kicking a player in the middle of a match and getting a 2-month ban from football. Still, none of this stopped him from joining the French under-21 national team soon after for the Euros, scoring 3 goals over the final 3 matches and taking the trophy, which led his popularity to skyrocket, leading his childhood club Marseille to come back for him trying to right their wrongs, and paying Auxerre 3.3 million euros for the 21-year-old, at the time the single most expensive transfer in the history of French football. With Cantona now alongside Jean-Pierre Papin, he was once again expected to take everything to a whole new level. But after all, he does have a habit of surprising people, so instead, things went wrong again. Only weeks after joining the club, the national team coach Henri Michel casually left him out of a meaningless international friendly, not thinking much of it. However, Cantona clearly thought it meant a lot, as he got so upset that he went on live TV and told the whole country that he thought the manager was a sack of shit, being banned from the national team for a full year. And if the Marseille supporters were already unsure if he was worth the problems he brought along, then they were pretty sure he wasn't. And once Cantona caught wind of the fact the Marseille supporters weren't on his side, he took it as a gigantic betrayal, and soon he was off on loan to Bordeaux. After a disappointing 6 months, he got another loan, this time to Montplier, where he finally tasted success once again, winning the French Cup. However, that only happened because Laurent Blanc and Valderrama came to his rescue, convincing the president not to terminate his loan after another training ground fight in which he threw his boots studs first into a teammate's face. And even though among all of this, Marseille was finally convinced to bring him back, once there, Cantona wasn't exactly happy with how the club was being led, constantly going up against the president Bernard Tapie, who was notoriously corrupt. Eventually getting on his nerves so much, Tapie simply sold him to Nîmes for a fraction of what they had paid just so he could get rid of him, which obviously made him really angry and left him extremely disappointed, soon informing his French teammates of his decision to quit football at the end of the season at the age of 25. So, hitting the lowest of lows and with seemingly nothing to lose, midway through the year he threw a ball at a referee and got a disciplinary hearing, where once he was asked to justify himself, he instead took the opportunity to one by one call every single member of the board an idiot to their face, leading them to end him a 2-month ban, to which Cantona simply took the opportunity to make it public that he had decided to retire. However, the moment he said this, Michel Platini, then the national team coach and a huge admirer of Cantona, made sure to rush to his side as soon as he could, damn near begging him to keep on playing, and after a few talks with his psychologist, Cantona arrived at a conclusion. He would consider not retiring as long as he didn't have to play in France anymore, and so Platini promptly began finding him offers away from his country. The first to come were Sheffield Wednesday, offering him a 2-week trial despite his worldwide fame, which he found insulting but still took, only for them to then ask him for another week, damn near exhausting his last bit of patience and sending him into retirement, had it not been for Leeds United coming to the rescue, hoping the mercurial Frenchman could help them perform a miracle, as midway through the season, even they were in complete disbelief over the fact they were first place in the league table. And by the time he arrived, Cantona was a bit out of the loop, having barely played any football over the 6 weeks before his signing, but once he entered the pitch, his presence was immediately felt. Even if the goals didn't pour in, the assists came one after the other, and 3 months later, by the time Leeds lifted the title, it was not even arguable, Cantona was the new king of Helen Road. And even if his summer went horribly wrong, with France failing to make it out of the group stage, Cantona then started the next season with a bang, putting up a hat-trick to beat Liverpool 4-3 in the Community Shield, then putting up another hat-trick against Tottenham 2 weeks later, and totaling 9 goals in his first 7 matches, quickly forgetting the drama at the Euros, though things wouldn't always be this easy. Despite Cantona's positive impact on the squad, manager Howard Wilkinson seemed to never fully trust him, which eventually led him to explode, angrily facing the coach after being subbed off in an European Cup match and ruining their relationship beyond repair. With Cantona soon being allowed to take a leave of absence, going to France for a while, coming back and handing the club an official transfer request only a few months after he had led them to the title. It was maybe overly dramatic, but it was as Cantona as it gets. And thankfully for him, salvation was underway, and its name was Sir Alex Ferguson. Putting it as simply as it gets, that season, United couldn't score a goal to save their own lives, and with only 8 wins in 18 matches, they needed a quick fix, so Fergie went up to Chairman Martin Edwards and asked for a new striker. Out of pure coincidence, while Fergie was in there, Leeds chairman Bill Fotherby called asking about the possibility of signing United left-back Dennis Irwin, which led Sir Alex to start gesturing, trying to force Edwards to ask about Cantona. And well, by the time Fergie had arrived at his car, Edwards was calling to tell him that the signing was complete and it would only cost him £1.2 million, 4 times less than Lazio had paid for Gascoigne that same year. Once Cantona arrived at the Old Trafford dressing room, he was not playing around, so the first thing he told his teammates was, I'm Eric, and I'm here to win the title for you. And goddammit, 6 months later, he had pulled off 9 goals and 11 assists in 22 matches, and Man United were on top of the league table for the first time in 26 years. When Sir Alex was asked what had happened, what had made the difference, he replied, Cantona's presence. He was a man of presence. That was the most important thing he could give us at that point. And he was right. It weren't the goals and assists that made the most difference that year. It was how he boosted his teammates' confidence, how after 26 years he made the club believe once more that they could rule the country. He was the trailblazer, he was the one who shifted the dynamic, the one who allowed all the success that came afterwards to take place. And you know what's funny? Despite all of the achievements I've been telling you about, it had been 7 years since the last time Cantona had been allowed to play a full season at any club. Between loan spells, winter transfers, and all of the chaos that came along Cantona, the last time he had managed to stay put in a single club from August to May had been his final season at Auxerre. But the following year, he would finally get to do it again, this time with a proper squad behind him, and in what was maybe the only time Cantona was ever afforded what you'd call a normal season, you could see he was more confident than ever, and so he immediately rose to a level that led many to question whether he was the best football player in the world. With 25 goals and 13 assists that year, not only was Cantona Man United's top goal scorer by quite a margin, but he was also only 1 goal away from being the league's top assist provider. Over the 34 league matches he played, he had only tasted defeat once. United had finished first with 8 points to spare and had also taken the FA Cup trophy, with Cantona getting a brace in the final to secure what was only the 4th League and Cup double of the century. Cantona was so good that season that when someone asked George Best what he thought of him, he said, I'd give up all the champagne I've ever drunk to be playing alongside him. And by the end of it all, Cantona would take the PFA Player of the Year award and most importantly a place at the Ballon d'Or podium alongside Baggio and Bergkamp. But obviously, Cantona couldn't allow this fairy tale to go on for too long, and so the next season he hit a new all-time low. Despite having already spat in the face of a Leeds fan and gotten into a bust-up with a policeman, so far Cantona's time at United had been oddly quiet, or at least that was until the 25th of January 1995. 48 minutes into a match against Crystal Palace, Cantona kicks a player out of frustration and gets sent off. Not a good sight, but nothing compared to what would happen afterwards. As Cantona gets taken off the pitch, he hears an opposition fan yell at him, "Go back to France, you French bastard." And like a predator, Cantona locks eyes with him, runs in his direction and kung fu kicks him right in the chest before unleashing hell onto the spectator. The following day, that moment would be on the front page of every newspaper, on every news channel. It was simply the most talked about thing in the country. Some said the xenophobe deserved it, some saw Cantona as a criminal, but in the end, the court of public opinion seemed to have decided that Cantona should never play again. And Cantona himself, well, he fled the country, escaping to Guadeloupe, where he made it all worse by punching a reporter who tried to photograph his wife. And by the time he came back, he was hit with a 9-month ban, still one of the longest bans in Premier League history. But hey, at least he managed to get his 2-week jail sentence down to only 120 hours of community service. But above all that happened around that time, nothing became more iconic than his speech in the press conference following the ban. He simply sat down and said, "When the seagulls follow the trawler, it is because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea." Then he got up and walked away. If normally Cantona would struggle not to run his mouth, this time he made sure he would leave no sardines behind for the seagulls to feast upon. Maybe this was the first sign that once again Cantona was tired, because the first thing he did after that was call the club and request for his contract to be terminated. It seemed Cantona was determined to flee the country once more, with Inter Milan already making the rounds, but thank God Sir Alex got on a plane to Paris, found him and managed to convince him to come back. Because once the 9 months had gone by, Cantona came back with a vengeance, pulling off a goal and an assist on his first match back against none other than Liverpool, and then getting 9 goal contributions in 9 matches, only to find Man United were still 10 points behind Newcastle by the time the winter market came around, and reacting by going off even harder, pulling off 10 goals and 6 assists in 15 matches, edging past Newcastle to take the league title while also scoring against every single team he faced in the FA Cup, and scoring the only goal of the final to take yet another league and cup double. No team had ever managed to do it twice. The next season, despite all of the struggles, Sir Alex presented Cantona with the biggest gift of all, the captain's armband, putting their mutual trust on display for everyone to see. It was beautiful, and it provided us with one of Cantona's most iconic though quiet seasons, getting 15 goals and 16 assists and taking his 5th Premier League title in 6 years, and that legacy, that trust, was condensed into one moment for the ages, as Cantona celebrated one of his final goals for United by simply standing on the middle of the pitch, chest puffed out, collars up, head held high, staring at his fans. The terrible child had finally found a home. But of course, as you might be expecting already, at the end of the season, despite being only 30 and easily one of the best players in the world, he finally did it for good. Cantona quit football, and this time no one could stop him. 1 more year could have seen him win the World Cup with France, 2 more could have seen him win the treble with United, but one thing is for sure, Cantona never needed silverware to be great. He simply was.